Welcome to the tool augmentation tool. Sounds redundant, does it not? So, this is a tool that I've created to try to help people understand how to navigate both the acquisition of tools as well as connecting tools to tasks that we routinely perform, in this case, as teachers. However, this tool could be adapted or can be adapted to any um, uh, innovative pursuit, whether we're talking about some sort of business need. As long as you can identify whatever your tasks are and break them down into a reasonable set of requirements, you can use those tasks and plug them into this as a way of understanding those tools. Broadly speaking, you navigate from, there's two ways to navigate this actually. The first way is to go down from the tool through the different components: space, time, and structure, which are the idea spaces components. Looking at each one of them separately, also looking at how each one of those areas are affected by the tool in both a traditional setting where you have people in the same place at the same time, led by some sort of leader of some sort of teacher, manager, whatever. One way to think of this is the classroom setting, or informally, which is where these brown, or informally in person, where people meet together on an informal basis, where you have places where people can hang around and brainstorm or learn or study together, things like that. Those are the traditional in-person environments that we have experienced for millennia, all the way back to the philosopher's tree, where everybody gathered and discussed concepts. Now, the blue areas are made possible by technology, and they shift the focus from being in person in the same time at the same place with the same people, and take them to a distant setting. So, first of all, you still have a synchronous environment in that regard, something like a Zoom meeting or something like that, where people are working together at the same time in that environment. And then you have an asynchronous environment where, just like with informal learning, where people are basically working on their own, but using the technology to share information and bring things back together again. Now, these four areas are all affected by space, which is the physical space that the tool affects, such as it can be, it can be a physical space or a virtual space. They're affected by the time. And what I'm talking about there is how does the tool actually shape the time that people have to spend on those tasks? Does it extend abilities to engage with things over time, after the building closes, so to speak? And then thirdly, how are they constrained, or how do they shape the structures that we work under, whether we're talking about a business structure or whether we're talking about a school structure, such as, the environment of classes and grades and so on and so forth that most educators have to operate under. So the idea is that you take a tool and you break them down under all three of those areas. And then after you've completed that, you synthesize those areas back together again. And to create a picture of how that tool shapes what you're doing. And then finally, if you want, you can add the learning activities part of it, which is something that Diana Laurillard, the categories are developed by Diana Laurillard. Those are what's on the right side of this image. But to get started, from a technical standpoint, so if you go to the tool augmentation tool link, which you will find both in the description to this video as well as from various places in the Idea Spaces network, there's the tool augmentation tool set of pages on the Idea Spaces page, which I recommend that everybody take a look through. It explores these concepts in more detail than this video will. But to get actually to where you can interact with this tool, either collectively with a group of people or by yourself, you have to first create an editable version of it. And to do that, using the diagrams.net software, which is created on, you go down to the bottom here and you can see this pops up here with a pencil on it. And when you click on that, it will create a new page, which now this is an editable page. Now you can actually download this and use it with the local version of the diagrams.net software. But if you edit it here, it's edited within the online version of the diagrams.net software. And you can save this into a Google Drive or whatever, wherever it makes sense for you. This would be your copy at this point. You can mark it up, mess it up in any way, shape, or form you like. And so that's how we get started. Now, in subsequent videos, I'm going to look at a particular tool and analyze how it goes through each one of these areas separately. So I'm going to make a separate video on space. I'm going to make a separate video for time. I'm going to make a separate video for structure. And then I'm going to talk about how you synthesize these things back together again. And then lastly, I'm going to make a video on how you can start with the learning activities that Laura Lard outlines and work your way backwards to saying, I want to be able to get my students to do these things. This is my goal in class, to achieve these things. And it's usually not just one, it's usually a combination of them. And then build backwards and say, okay, well, I need a tool that does these sorts of things. That's what these green boxes are here. The green boxes always refer to the learning activities portion of the conversation. If that's not something that's a concern to you, you don't have to do that. I mean, obviously you can do as little or as much of this, but I do encourage you to go through and at least break down these outcomes in each four of these areas, because it will make you look at the tools that you're considering very differently than what you started with. You may think this tool is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but then when you start thinking through the implications it has for the environment in which you're trying to use it, then you may discover that it's going to create lots of disruption. It's either not going to get used. There's all sorts of outcomes here that I've personally seen in my years of implementing tools in various environments that have been suboptimal outcomes. And that's part of the discovery process, but this is meant as a way of helping you think through as much of this as possible before you inflict this on your users. So this is it for part number one. As I said, there's going to be an additional 4 parts to this conversation. Actually, 5, I'm sorry. 5 parts and by the time we're done. And I hope it's useful to you. Thanks. Once you've entered some data into your diagram, into your diagram.net diagram, you'll notice it'll say untitled diagram after you've created the diagram, but you'll notice this red box will pop up and it'll say unsaved changes, save here. Now you can call it whatever you like. In this case, since I'm analyzing Miro, I'll call it Miro analysis. And I'll choose I can simply go download and it'll drop into my download folder. And there you go. Or you can put it wherever you like in those different options. But then once you have that file, you can, if you click on that as a download, it will launch the Draw.io app as a local app. And now this is local to my computer.